These are statements that, like, you don't go back on. These are people choosing a side and choosing it permanently. Right now, Republicans are very, very angry. Very, very angry. I still got the horse on screen. Look at the real horse. They're very angry. Why are they angry? Because they were expecting a magical outcome this election. They were expecting a red wave. They were expecting to take the Senate, and they were expecting to take the House. But what happened is that Dr. Oz lost in Pennsylvania. We just heard that Kari Lake lost as well to Katie Hobbs. We're seeing, Blake lose as well. We're seeing all these Republican challengers losing one after the other after the other. They didn't lose all of them. J.D. Vance won in Ohio. J.D. Vance won. But it seems that the red wave didn't manifest. The only place it did manifest was in Florida. The Republicans did very well in Florida. That's going to become important in a second. And so they lost their chance to take the Senate. And it looks like they are also possibly just barely going to take the House. There's still a chance they might lose it. But they're going to have like a majority of one. Of literally a single vote. It looks like it's going to be. It could still flip. It could still flip. It's very close to flipping. There's a bunch of minor stuff we could also talk about, like the Democrats not losing a single trifecta in the whole country. That means control of the state's courts, the state's elective system, the state's representatives, and the governorship. They actually were able to expand to a majority in Pennsylvania. They were able to expand to a majority in Michigan for the first time in 40 years. We saw marijuana pass on the ballot in places like Maryland. We flipped the governorship in Maryland. Basically, what I'm getting at is the red wave didn't happen. It was a red trickle at best. Hopefully for Republicans, they'll take the House. Hopefully we'll keep it. But they want to take the House. Either way, the red wave didn't come. And so now people are asking and playing the blame game and dealing with the side effects of it. And so first I want to show you just some of the pain Republicans are feeling after this midterm loss. Ted Cruz had something to say. He said, "I am so pissed off, I cannot even see straight. The rage that I am feeling, there are almost not words to describe it. It is hard to describe my feelings as anything other than rage right now." Listen to this.
And there are a lot of Americans that are going to be tuning in to you this morning, and they want to know who is to blame for this. There are a ton of people arguing over this right now that's saying it's Mitch McConnell's fault. No, it's Donald Trump's fault for picking candidates like Dr. Oz, and then it's not even his fault, it's his wife's fault. And everybody's trying to figure out, how do you put this in a box? And I think it's so important to get your take on this. What happened? How did this happen? And who's to blame for it?
Well, Ben, let me start off by saying I am so pissed off I cannot even see straight. We had an extraordinary opportunity. We had a generational opportunity. This should have been a fundamental landslide election. We should have won the House and the Senate. We should have a 30, 40, 50 vote majority in the House. We should have 53, 54, 55 Republicans in the Senate. And instead, holy crap, the Democrats keep the Senate. Worse than that, the Democrats potentially grow their majority in the Senate. Worse than that, yes, we take the House, but at best, we're going to take the House with a couple of seats. Maybe. There is an outside chance we lose the House. I don't think we will. I think the numbers are enough that we will hold on to the House, but it's going to be a majority of 219, 220, 221, 222. 218 is a majority. So we're going to be looking at a 2-3-4 vote majority at best. The rage Americans are feeling across this country, the rage that I'm feeling, there are almost not words to describe it. Because this opportunity was screwed up. It was screwed up badly, and the people who are going to pay the price are the American people. The country is screwed for the next 4 years because of this. We're going to see horrible left-wing judges confirmed for the next 2 years because of this. We're going to see judges taking away our free speech rights, our religious liberty rights, our Second Amendment rights.
All of them.
It is an enormous missed opportunity, and I got to say it is hard to describe my feelings as anything other than rage right now.
Kaziem got a tier 1 subscription. Any advantage under 5 in the house is literally nothing. Ours to the horse D this go.
Amen. Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. You're not too far off. But I want to just say, this was fantastic for me. Just listening to that entire interaction was absolutely fantastic for me. You can tell that Ted Cruz is legitimately angry. I doubt he's going to point fingers and say it was Trump. But you can hear it from the question the person was asking him. Oh, is it Trump's fault for picking the bad candidates? And it's not just Ted Cruz who's saying, who's having to entertain this idea. And it's not just that questioner who's asking that question. We saw Ann Coulter turn on Trump in the last few days. We're seeing Fox News guests on Fox News saying, hey, Trump, we don't want you to run again. We love you, Trump, we love you, but don't run again. But don't run again. And we're seeing more and more people talk about this idea of Ron DeSantis 2024. This idea that DeSantis, Florida's the one place the red wave hit. If the red wave hit the coast of anything, it was the coast of Florida. And Ron DeSantis was the leader of the ship that led the Republican team to victory. Where everywhere else, Republicans failed. I mean, they got to keep Ohio with J.D. Vance. They beat Tim Ryan, which that upset me. I wanted Tim Ryan to win. I think Tim Ryan's okay. And so I think a lot of Republicans are saying this whining about election fraud, that's not something that wins over moderates. Moderates don't care that Donald Trump lost in 2020. They don't believe in the nonsense that it was stolen. Maybe some amongst the base, actually the majority of the base of the Republican Party do, but the independents, not really. And it's not a motivator like, oh, I'm going to go vote to really stick it to that election that happened 2 years ago when we have issues like inflation and paying groceries and gas prices, the child tax credit and legalization of marijuana and all these other issues, Ukraine, all these other issues on the ballot. I'm going to go make a virtue signal vote for Donald Trump in 2020. That was not a winning strategy, and people like Carrie Lake and Dr. Oz had to entertain that too much in order to win Donald Trump's favor. And we saw that across the board as well with, for example, the Secretary of State candidate for the Republicans in Arizona who also lost. In fact, election denying Secretary of States seem to have lost almost across the board. It seems that this actually did not only was it not a uniter when it comes to getting independence and was not a winner for campaigns. I don't even think it was net neutral either. I think it was a loser for campaigns. I think definitely at the Westmore rally I went to, right, when Joe Biden came to speak, I saw a lot of young people who are really motivated about this idea of protecting our democracy against election deniers. And so I think actually you can see there's a few examples of Republicans performing lower if they're election deniers in these elections. And the most obvious example of it would be in Secretary of State races, seeing Republicans doing worse than Democrats, but then the Republicans will do better for governor. And so there's going to be some states that are actually going to have Republican everything and a Democratic Secretary of State who manages elections. Not only is it not a winner for elections, except outside of the base, it might be a loser for elections. Enough, maybe something to fundraise money off of, but not something to win over independents with. Something that could actually hurt you and motivate the Democrats and motivate other people to not vote for your guy for Secretary of State. And so running on 2020 election denial in 2022 just didn't work. There were other issues as well, but that was not a winner. And it seems that the candidates that Donald Trump chose, and Dr. Oz and Carrie Lake, the people he interfered to make win in primary elections over more likely to win candidates, more moderate Republican candidates, moderate in the sense of in comparison to Carrie Lake and Dr. Oz, mind you. He interfered and had the radicals win, and this was the result. They lost. And so a lot of Republicans are really asking, is Donald Trump good for the future of the party? And for the first time ever, it seems that Republicans might be answering back, no. And I want to point out 2 examples. The first example is a poll that just came out. This is one of the first post-election polls. So this is after the midterms. In a perspective, in a hypothetical, 2 years from now, 2024 Texas Republican primary. The results is Pompeo, 1%. Tim Scott, 1%. Haley, 4%. Mike Pence, 5%. Donald Trump, 32%. And DeSantis, 43%. Wow, that is stunning. That's an 11-point lead in blood red Texas. And the thing is, when I talked about this last with you guys and this idea of this Trump civil war, when I said this was before we had our post-election polling.
Immoral, morally corrupt.
This was before that. It's Vishy. Thank you so much for the tier 1. I saw the clip of Matt Gaetz being based. I think he was factory reset. I'll have to look at that in a second. I think you're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. But leading up to this, I said we can't. I was making a lot of warnings about this idea of Trump losing his base, losing the Republican Party. And I kept saying, like, we don't know if Ron DeSantis can appeal to people outside of Florida. We don't know what the polling data is out of Texas yet. We don't know Pennsylvania. And we don't know what they'll be 2 years from now when people actually not only have to vote in a straw poll about who would they vote for, but actually vote in person. We don't know all that. And we still don't know all of it. But now we have an idea of at least the immediate effects. And it seems that Ron DeSantis has gotten through that first wall. At least in Texas. We're going to get more polls from other states, but all the other polls I've seen has Ron DeSantis up. This is actually a turn of 23 points. He's gone up 23 points since before the pre-midterm polls. 23 points. That is massive. If DeSantis could keep this support at this level, he could win a primary. But there's a fundamental question. Can he keep it at this level? Once Trump most likely announces that he's running for president on November 15th, can DeSantis deal with the onslaught that's going to come from Donald Trump? Because again, people forget that Jeb Bush was in Ron DeSantis's position. He was a somewhat popular governor, popular governor from Florida, who had the institutions backing him because they thought he was the safe bet for the Republican Party moving forward. And he's from Florida. Now, obviously, the mannerisms of Jeb Bush and the mannerisms of Ron DeSantis have changed. The situation has changed. But there's nothing necessarily that says that Ron DeSantis has to be the one that has the magic spell to beat Donald Trump. There's nothing specifically saying that. Nothing at all. But this looks bad. This doesn't look good for Trump. This is the first time we've seen numbers like this in comparison to a hypothetical matchup. Now, Donald Trump can still survive, and maybe he puts on an onslaught on Ron DeSantis that's going to be enough to strike him down. Maybe DeSantis isn't able to keep these numbers high enough for long enough, and they fall back down. But this is the weakest position Trump has been politically the entirety of his career post-Republican primary. This is the most weak Donald Trump has been. Because not only is he still embroiled in scandal after scandal, but he's also embroiled in scandal after scandal when his polling data generally is pretty bad amongst independents still. He's whining about an issue, 2020, that is not a winner in the elections. And now his polling data's down. And he's choosing bad primary candidates. And you want to know what the thing is about the new Trump scandals is a lot of Republicans could ignore the old ones when picking their candidate because he's Donald Trump. Got the energy, and there's no other choice, and we kind of have to. But when it's revealed that Donald Trump's motive for taking the classified documents for the White House and causing that massive scandal was just because he was egotistical and wanted to show them off. He wanted to show off classified papers. These scandals, when these come out, maybe not all Republicans are going to go into super defense mode. Going to get in the trenches and defend him for these stupid reasons because they're going to think, hey, DeSantis is another option. He's polling better than Trump. He's polls better with independents than Trump. Maybe I don't get in the trenches and defend him tooth and nail this time. And it's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him. Trump, it's just a matter of time until Trump walks into another scandal. He's a scandal-prone guy. He naturally walks into scandals. And I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to come to his rescue. I don't think necessarily Mitch McConnell is either. I think Mitch McConnell wants to be rid of him. We're seeing Fox turn on him. The New York Post, we saw their front cover was Trumpty Dumpty was making fun of him. Just saying, maybe they won't jump in the trenches next time to defend him. Because now they've got DeSantis. An easier bet, an easier W. This might be the end of Donald Trump as a viable political figure in politics. Now again, we gotta wait for him to launch the campaign machine. We need to see how DeSantis fares against the onslaught Trump did. Because we didn't think Trump would win the Republican primary. But he got over all of them. He beat all of them. He beat Ben Carson. He beat Jeb Bush. He beat Marco Rubio. He beat everyone, man. Everyone. Ted Cruz. He knocked him. Carly Fiorina. Like, he knocked them all down. Rand Paul. He knocked down what was supposed to be like a new generation. Chris Christie, a new generation of Republican talent. And so, it's not crazy to think he could just do that again. We can't count him out now. But Trump seems to be in dire straits. And scandals like these are going to hit harder when there's less people to defend him. And even some of the most diehard Trump people are reconsidering. Like Mo Brooks. Look at this guy. Mo Brooks. This was the same guy who went to January 6th in body armor and gave a speech. He was in body armor for Trump on January 6th giving speeches. He's now saying that Trump is dishonest, disloyal, incompetent, and crude. As you might expect, Mo Brooks says Donald Trump should not be elected president again. A Republican relationship that began imploding more than a year ago when Brooks, the outgoing congressman from Huntsville, said at a Trump rally in August 2021 that voters should take Trump objected 2020 presidential elections and put that behind you. The deterioration continued when Brooks said Trump repeatedly asked him to forge a path in Congress for President Joe Biden to be removed from office and replaced by Trump, and culminated in March when Trump retracted his endorsements of Brooks' Senate campaign. So with 2022 midterms wrapping up in disappointment, for Republicans and Trump set to declare his candidacy for president on Tuesday, Brooks said Friday should perhaps surprise no one. It would be a bad mistake for the Republicans to have Donald Trump as their nominee in 2024, Brooks said in an interview. Donald Trump has proven himself to be dishonest, disloyal, incompetent, and crude, and a lot of other things that alienate so many independents and Republicans. Even a candidate whose campaigns from his basement can beat him. My goodness. My goodness. I'm sorry, but these are statements that, like, you don't go back on. These are people choosing a side and choosing it permanently. And for people like Mo Brooks, who again was at January 6th making speeches for him, and 1 year to go from that to this, that shows a sea change. Not everybody is going to change. We got people like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Carrie Lake, who just lost, by the way. It was announced like 30 minutes before this. They'll stay loyal. But Trump is in the weakest political position he has his entire political career since he was, he won the Republican primary. If there is a time to take down Trump and to doom him, it's now. It's now. I think if I was DeSantis, I would announce right away because I want to get on the attack foot as quickly as possible and get this resolved quickly as possible. Because as a Democrat, This is great. The more chaos in the Republican Party, the more infighting, the better. Because then whoever comes from that struggle will be a weaker candidate overall. And Trump might not only be dooming himself, but possibly the entire Republican Party.